I'm trying to harm myself, not with blades or pills, but by pretending I don't feel anything at all. I smile in front of everyone, but I've been silently destroying myself in private. I harm myself by keeping people who hurt me close just to not feel alone. I'm trying to harm myself by bottling everything so tight. It explodes in silence. The scariest part, I don't scream, I just disappear while smiling. It's not the pain I am addicted to. It's the escape that comes with it. People see my calm, but inside I'm a battlefield where I keep losing. I'm trying to harm myself by loving people who only remember me when the harm I cause myself, it's invisible. It's choosing silence when I need to scream. I'm trying to harm myself with the memories I revisit every night. My mind is where I bleed the most, and no one notices. I harm myself by faking strength when I'm drowning in weakness. Feel too deep and never walk away. I harm myself by pretending I'm fine when I'm just tired of everything. I'm trying to harm myself by carrying everyone's weight but my own. I hurt myself by expecting love from people who never even saw me. My scars don't show. They live in the pauses between my smiles. I harm myself with overthinking, assuming, and staying where I'm not valued. I am trying to harm myself by revisiting the pain that already broke me. Every time I say, I'm okay, another piece of me fades. I harm myself by ignoring my needs just to keep others happy. I'm the silent kind of broken. You won't hear me crack, but I'm falling. I harm myself through isolation. I push people away before they leave. I don't use knives. I use silence, distance, and emotional detachment. I harm myself by replaying words that were meant to destroy me. My suffering is subtle. I walk with it like a shadow I never chose. I harm myself by chasing people who keep showing me I don't matter. I'm trying to harm myself by hiding in plain sight. I harm myself by living in the past. I can't seem to let go of. My pain isn't loud. It's quiet. It sits in my chest like a secret. I harm myself by apologizing when I'm the one hurt. I'm trying to harm myself by being numb on purpose. I harm myself with over effort, trying too hard to be loved. My form of harm, smiling when my soul's screaming for help. I'm not bleeding, but inside, it feels like I'm fading away. I harm myself by putting on masks, hiding everything real. I'm trying to harm myself by staying in places I've outgrown. I harm myself by comparing my wounds to others, invalidating my pain. The harm I do is invisible, emotionally shutting down to survive. I harm myself by hoping, then come back when I know they won't. I'm trying to harm myself by keeping the pain alive, just to feel something. I harm myself by pretending I'm not tired when I haven't rested. In months, my self-harm, giving my energy to people who leave me empty. I harm myself by believing I deserve this emptiness. I am trying to harm myself by holding in tears until my heart forgets how to cry. I harm myself by staying quiet when I'm screaming inside. The most dangerous harm is when you no longer want to be seen. I harm myself by blaming myself for how others treat me. I'm trying to harm myself by chasing perfection in a world full of flaws. My harm doesn't come from others. It's the way I betray myself. I harm myself by ignoring the warning signs my body whispers daily. I harm myself by suppressing emotions that demand to be felt. I'm trying to harm myself by acting like I don't need anyone. I harm myself by staying silent about the war inside my head. I harm myself by making peace with pain instead of healing it. I harm myself by hiding the parts of me that are still human. I'm trying to harm myself by forgetting how to ask for help. Harm myself by loving people who never look back. My self-harm isn't visible, but my spirit is tired. I harm myself by rewriting my worth based on someone else's actions. I harm myself by locking up emotions that only want to be heard. I harm myself by believing the lies depression whispers. I'm trying to harm myself by choosing loneliness over vulnerability. I harm myself by pretending I don't care. When I care too much, I harm myself by avoiding the mirror. I don't like who I see. I'm trying to harm myself by becoming a version of me no one can recognize. I harm myself by loving louder than anyone ever loved me back. I harm myself by answering messages I should ignored just to feel wanted. I'm trying to harm myself by pretending nothing ever hurt me. I harm myself by waiting for closure from people who gave me trauma. I harm myself by reliving conversations that shattered my peace. I'm trying to harm myself by sacrificing my needs for everyone else's comfort. I harm myself by calling it loyalty when it's just fear of abandonment. I harm myself by replaying my mistakes louder than my growth. I'm trying to harm myself by clinging to people who let me go emotionally. I harm myself by putting everyone first, even when I'm breaking. I harm myself by holding on to guilt I should have let go of years ago. I'm trying to harm myself by being silent when my soul is begging to speak. I harm myself by pretending I'm healed just to avoid disappointing others. I harm myself by remembering every word they used to break me. I harm myself by pretending I'm emotionless just to survive. I'm trying to harm myself by making pain my comfort zone. I harm myself by acting like I never needed anyone. I harm myself by expecting peace from the people who gave me war. I harm myself by keeping secrets that are killing me inside. I'm trying to harm myself by not forgiving myself for things I did to survive. I harm myself by giving chances to those who already destroyed me. I harm myself by hiding my tears behind sarcasm and laughter. I harm myself by keeping emotions buried until I can't breathe. I'm trying to harm myself by falling asleep, hoping I don't wake up the same. I harm myself by calling pain normal and healing dramatic. I harm myself by pretending I don't need help when I'm screaming for it. I harm myself by walking through life like I'm just an extra in my own story. I'm trying to harm myself by numbing out the parts of me that still feel. I harm myself by staying in rooms where my silence is the only thing heard. I harm myself by not asking for love just in case I'm denied again. I harm myself by blaming myself for their betrayal. I harm myself by clinging to versions of myself that were never free. I'm trying to harm myself by being everyone's peace, even while I'm breaking. I harm myself by bottling up storms and calling it strength. I harm myself by believing my pain isn't worthy of compassion. I harm myself by romanticizing pain as if it's the only thing that's ever stayed. I harm myself by listening to the voice that says, "You'll never be enough." I'm trying to harm myself by calling my anxiety just being dramatic. I harm myself by refusing to rest because I don't think I've earned peace. I harm myself by hiding every bruise my soul carries. I harm myself by seeking validation from people who never saw my worth. I harm myself by whispering truths in rooms that only hear lies. I harm myself by holding on to people who wouldn't hold space for me. I'm trying to harm myself by becoming someone unrecognizable just to feel loved. I harm myself by turning my vulnerability into shame. I harm myself by carrying guilt that was never mine to begin with. I harm myself by staying quiet when the silence is killing me. I harm myself by making everyone else's emotions more important than mine. I harm myself by wearing a smile that doesn't belong to my heart. I'm trying to harm myself by calling my breakdowns just bad days. I harm myself by convincing myself I don't deserve softness. I harm myself by creating people who remind me of my pain. I harm myself by treating my scars like secrets. I harm myself by running from healing because pain feels familiar. I'm trying to harm myself by shrinking just to fit into someone else. I harm myself by locking away dreams I no longer believe I deserve. I harm myself by loving others in ways I've never loved myself. I harm myself by expecting understanding from those who only judge. मधुबन तोला जो कि आ चुका है बाढ़, जो पानी बहुत तेजी से बढ़ रही है और यहाँ की सड़क भी तोड़ दिए है। यहाँ के मुखिया महादेव ने सड़क नहीं बनाई है। मधुबन में बहुत तेजी से बढ़ रही पानी। I harm myself by acting strong for so long. I forgot how to ask for help. I harm myself by giving people more chances than I ever gave myself grace. I harm myself by letting trauma write my identity. I harm myself by hiding my sadness behind fake achievements. I'm trying to harm myself by convincing my heart it's not allowed to want more. I harm myself by choosing silence when my story would set me free. I harm myself by treating exhaustion as productivity. I harm myself by carrying the weight of unspoken grief. I harm myself by normalizing pain I should have healed from. I harm myself by settling in places where I feel unseen. I'm trying to harm myself by building walls no one can climb, not even me. I harm myself by avoiding mirrors because I no longer recognize who I've become. I harm myself by minimizing pain just to seem okay. I harm myself by expecting peace in storms I keep walking into. I harm myself by loving people who only come back when they're empty. I harm myself by turning numbness into a lifestyle. I harm myself by turning every red flag into a challenge to fix. I harm myself by clinging to the person I had to become to survive. I harm myself by not giving myself time to simply breathe. I'm trying to harm myself by hiding pain under a schedule. I harm myself by calling my emotional fatigue just being lazy. I harm myself by letting their opinions dictate my worth. I harm myself by pouring from empty soul just to be loved. I harm myself by seeing rejection as proof I'll never be enough. I harm myself by calling my loneliness independence. I harm myself by being the healer who never heals. I harm myself by ignoring signs my heart is begging me to see. I harm myself by numbing joy before it even arrives. I harm myself by treating self-neglect like maturity. I harm myself by letting anxiety write my story. I harm myself by being addicted to chaos just to avoid silence. I harm myself by believing peace will only come when I'm perfect. I harm myself by staying attached to people who left long ago. I harm myself by mistaking emotional neglect for love. I harm myself by measuring my value by who stays. I harm myself by pretending closure isn't something I crave. I harm myself by constantly trying to prove I'm not a burden. I harm myself by keeping my voice quiet, even when I want to scream. I harm myself by loving harder than I protect myself. I harm myself by bottling up every breakdown to seem stable. I harm myself by showing up for everyone but me. I harm myself by ignoring the parts of me that still believe in magic. I harm myself by holding in emotions like they're sins. I harm myself by convincing myself I don't miss anyone. I harm myself by allowing fear to decide who I become. I harm myself by burying grief under daily routines. I harm myself by shrinking every time. Want to take up space? I harm myself by translating love into sacrifice. I harm myself by forgetting that I too am human. I harm myself by clinging to guilt as if it defines me. I harm myself by building a life that forgets how to rest. I harm myself by apologizing for being emotional. I harm myself by masking pain with humor. I harm myself by pushing away the few who truly cared. I harm myself by avoiding the healing that scares me. I harm myself by chasing perfection instead of peace. I harm myself by ignoring the child within me that still cries. I harm myself by never telling anyone how much I needed them. I harm myself by loving others while I keep bleeding in silence.